Hi, I'm Gordon Raquel from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by Joseph Fulton, editor of Kevin Can Fuck Himself, That 90s Show, and the new installment of Frasier. Welcome to the show, Joseph.
Hello, thank you. Glad to be here.
I know I want to talk to you about Frasier, but I do have to talk to you a bit about Kevin Can Fuck Himself.
It's always fun to
Because
see how much people lean into the fun part of that title.
yeah, well, and it's such an interesting show, and the thing that really, from an editing standpoint, I was interested in was the tone shifting,
Hmm.
and how much of that, because in it, sometimes it's quite obvious, like she'll go outside to the stoop, and it's completely the lighting changes, everything shifts, but how does the editing change when you did the tone shifts?
Yeah, for those that aren't familiar, it's a half multicam and half like
Yes,
single
that's right.
cam, hard drama, and we had plans for every episode. What is the transition between scene to scene going to look like? You had to be really sure that on the script those lines weren't going to be cut or whatever, and so when Annie walks out of the living room into the kitchen, where are we going to cut and all that, and I was there and I only did all the multicams scenes in every episode, and they had some single camera editors that did a traditional rotation of episodes
Mhm.
throughout uh, the two seasons we had. But we really, in our tone meetings and stuff like that, we really said like what's going to happen in the transitions. It was all planned out. The editors got less and less involved in that as the episodes went on. But at the very
Mhm.
beginning, it was like, do you think this will work? What do you think? And then we actually did a camera test, which is kind of rare for a multicam comedy to do a
Mhm.
camera test. And we set up two cameras and filmed an entire scene, the first scene of the series actually, and then they also did later that day. They filmed the single camera parts inside the kitchen, and I just kind of sat there, when I got the footage, and it was just two cameras static, and I just was sort of making my own close-ups or a two shot here or a three shot here or whatever, and it was like not presentable to the viewing public, but it really
Mhm.
it alleviated the concerns that maybe the network had, and the producers were like, all right, we've got a good show here, the transitions are going to work. So
Mhm.
and their focus from the very beginning was, let's make this the best multicam comedy. Like, it's a funny comedy that you would want to watch.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that was really the driving force of that, was to make it funny and actually feel like a multicam instead of just this like device for the other part of the show, if you will.
My friends and I would make little videos in our backyards, imitations of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. Eventually that need to tell stories became more of a technical interest and an interest in the art. To me, what's exciting is using cinema in its full potential, which is rhythm and sound design and music. Our job is to set up expectations and then deliver on them. I'm Brian Cates, and this is my course in film editing.
Do you think anyone stumbled into it who was a fan of Kevin Can Wait?
I'm not, I'm sure that there's a Venn diagram of people who watched both.
Yeah.
Hopefully they enjoyed both, and it was it was fun to sort of you know point out some things that maybe needed to be written out of multicams. It's like, we have the misogynistic male chauvinist,
Mhm.
and I think, in multicams today and in TV and movies in general, that's not really a character you could just plug in. Like, people are going to ask questions now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not just because of our show. It's lots of things happening in the world, but maybe help with that a little bit.
Now, I want to jump to Frasier because you you cut The Blind Date, which got nominated for an Emmy. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering, I guess, to sort of set us up, like, how did you get involved with Frasier?
Well, obviously, I've been a fan of the original series. If you've seen it, it's just
Hmm.
fantastic television. And one of the executive producers on the reboot here was Chris Harris, who I'd worked with before. We kept in touch over the years. And so I think when my resume came across the desk of potential editors they were looking at, he said, "Oh yeah, let's bring him in," and had a good interview and got a job offer. And did my research by watching all the original Frasiers again, just to
Just for fun.
yeah, it was for fun, and also to you know, be able to put our best foot forward with the new series.
What's interesting about, so if we track Frasier's sort of trajectory, like in his first appearance in Cheers, like if we go back to Cheers, their pilot is like the perfect pilot. Like everything's sort of set up and just works. And same with Frasier, the first one. Yeah, you know, the pilot, it just sort of clicks and works. So, you know, there's something about, you know, whoever's the producers of this who understand sitcoms. What did you learn from, you know, rewatching that you took into your cuts for this series?
Yeah, there's very few shows where like from the get-go the characters are like super defined, and you know they change obviously and grow throughout the years, but they don't change that much. Like Friends is a great example of, you know, those 6 characters are pretty much locked in. They didn't get affected by like audience feedback and stuff like that throughout the years. A character like completely changes course. So, you know, there was a lot of pressure on our supporting cast to find their character, but we had Jimmy Burrows, who did the pilot of Frasier and a lot of the series as well. And I know he helped them, you know, try and find their character. Some of them had just come on like a couple weeks before we started filming, you know, so it was, you know, kind of late casting. So it was also a challenge for me just to like, you know, I know who these characters are, like how they're like speaking to me on camera, you know, but I don't want to like just box them into the archetypes that maybe people think they're going to be. So there's just a lot of maybe some nuances, like a reaction shot, or how long do you hold on after their joke or something like that would help that. But you know, we did episode 1 and then we jumped right into episode 2. We didn't have a pilot and, you know, a break in between. We just shot our 10 episodes in a normal production schedule. So it was fun and exciting to hop right in.
So for the blind date episode, what was the footage like that was coming to you? Like, what were the performances like?
It was, you know, that's a chaotic episode. There's a lot of stuff happening, and it's, you know, I'm over here, I'm over there. So, you know, we actually, when we filmed it on set, we filmed a lot of those in one take. You know, there's like a 26-page scene or something like that, and it goes back and forth between the kitchen and living room at least 5 or 6 times, if not like 8 or 9 times between both. I didn't count. And we you know, with the blessing of digital technology, we could roll for like 20-30 minute takes, and we did a reset. So it's like we kept that energy up. It's like, hey, we got to get going, because when you're on that multicam stage and there's an audience that's laughing, and you know, you hear you know, reset and are we ready and cameras set and all that stuff, you know, there is a frantic energy. So I think Jack, who plays Freddie, and Kelsey, who plays Frazier, were, you know, at least influenced, you know, maybe subliminally by that. And we had the other characters who are a little bit more calm, but you know, I was there when we were filming it. I'm like, okay, there's a lot of good stuff here, and you know, taking my mental notes when I'm on set. But there's you know, there was, I mean, those guys were pros. I mean, all of the 4 actors who came into that big scene really nailed it, because they, you know, they gave me a lot of good stuff, and they matched for the most part, which is an editor's favorite dream when they have continuity.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved
the classroom. I love the computer station. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now.
Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
When I've talked to some editors, there might be a pressure to like pick up the pacing and what have you. And there's one moment in it where June is in, and Frazier's in the kitchen, Freddie's in the living room, and then they keep switching. And you hold on the wide shot to give us that not physical humor, but visual gag. But I feel like a lot of directors and editors would want to cut it up in some way. And sort of, do you feel that pressure these days, or did you find in that instance you could play it out?
There's a lot of ways to cut a scene, and most of them aren't right, I guess. In a way, like there's a lot of ways to mess up a show.
Yeah.
Few ways to make it good. But yeah, it was pretty obvious that like with the blocking and stuff, you'd want to see that carousel in its totality. Really, you'd want to have that in the wide, and you wouldn't want to like manufacture it. Like it would just feel forced and produced or whatever if I was cutting to this door and this door and this door.
Yeah.
And and then of course just the doors look very similar, so it'd be maybe a little bit jarring. But there wasn't really a lot of discussion. I just kind of let it up there, and I think we changed takes or something like that. But we didn't necessarily change the cutting pattern of that wide close up or anything like that, because it was just so much more fun to see them going around and around and around. So yeah, that was one of the fun parts there. I was very excited to get into the edit bay and cut that together.
What is because depending on the actor's delivery, that's going to impact the pacing. And with comedy, it's all about timing. So how much leeway do you get to actually sort of manipulate the jokes?
I mean, there's usually a lot when you have your traditional coverage and singles and stuff like that. Even if it's a little dirty, you have over the shoulder or something like that. A frame makes a difference. Like, any couplet of 2 lines or whatever with a setup and a punchline or anything like that, I'll lay it in my sequence, and then maybe I'm looking at it later, I'm like, oh look, I added like 1 frame of timing. I opened it up by 1 frame, where I maybe I took out 1 frame. Like that sometimes makes a huge difference. A lot of times it's a second or something like that. It's a little bit more than a frame. But it's always interesting when I look at my thing. I say, okay, yeah, and then, well, why did I take that frame out and go back and put it back? Oh no, it's totally gone. Even though it's crazy, it's 1/24 of a second. It's still better when when it's timed a little bit better.
Yeah.
And a lot of that sometimes is like I have a better performance on take 2 or something like that, but the audience had already heard it, so they didn't laugh as long because they'd already heard the joke in take 1, so it wasn't as funny to them in take 2. But to the viewer who's hearing it for the first time, we need to pause for that appropriate amount of time before the next piece of dialogue comes in.
What was there more to the theater experience? Because I feel like I was like, I loved it because we've all been in that experience.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, was there more to it, or was that what you got?
You mean talk about the theater in the episode?
Yeah, where they go to the theater that's just a terrible play.
Yeah.
No planned.
I think we did cut some dialogue. Eve had a bigger soliloquy. She was talking on endlessly and stuff, but I mean, that's really hard to carry there. So we and I think when we're in that episode, we want to get back to what's happening in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So we had a little bit. I mean, it was probably like 80 or 90% of it stayed, which is probably typical for like a script. So you always want to cut till it hurts.
Yeah,
that's something you want to keep in the parts that aren't funny and cut out the parts that aren't and that aren't interesting and don't move the plot forward. So that's what we did. I can't think of anything else. There was there wasn't too much that we cut out of there, but it was it served its purpose.
June is she'd been on Netflix in Grace and Frankie, and in their footage there was a lot of sort of ad-libbing and playing with the script. Is in something like this, were they given that opportunity to play with the script, or was it by the book?
We in a multicam they rehearse for like 3 days before we start actually rolling cameras. And in our case, it's usually like 4 days, and we don't do that multicam pre-shoot day where we pre-shoot scenes. So I can't really speak to what they did in the rehearsal or anything like that, or in the notes process after a run through. Hey, it'd be better if my character would do something like this, and then they rewrite it, put it in the script. But when you're at the taping and the audience is there and stuff, you can't really ad lib too much, and got to make sure your boom microphone is following you. So there wasn't much ad lib live. Maybe they threw in something, or hey, that'd be funny if this happened or something like that, but can't really speak to that process that happened. But that's a traditional or it's a typical multicam thing that, hey, this joke didn't, like, the audience didn't laugh, it clearly wasn't funny or whatever, it wasn't something that was wrong, maybe they didn't hear it because they were laughing too much at the previous joke, or do we just need to write a new joke for this area? And then the writers come up with something and give it to the actors, and then they have to hit it out of the park on the first take of the new line, which is just like unbelievable to me every time I see it.
Wow. So is there a particular scene that you loved but was really difficult to edit?
I think the episode that I submitted that was nominated for the Ace Eddie was Blind Date, and just that 26-page scene, because it's easy to be consistent as an actor or whatever and be in the same place and have that emotion and stuff on like a 2-page scene. But if you string that out, okay, where was I, and like what hand did I have this in, and all that stuff. So there was as on anything, there's a little inconsistencies, but maybe gets a little bit more magnified as the scene gets longer and longer and longer. Because we did it like I think 3 takes, maybe 2 and a pickup of some areas. So but that all goes back to the rehearsal process. They're figuring it out through there. But then earlier in the season we had the fake Dr. Crane episode, which was like a psychiatrist TV show, and we had like a little intro, and there were just so much good stuff there, but we knew that we couldn't play it on for like 20 or 30 seconds. It had to be like a 10-second joke. So we had so much stuff, and I had to find just like the best parts of that little fake TV show intro, which is pretty exciting.
Now you said you were a fan of the original Frasier series. Where do you hope Frazier goes from here as a character?
Oh man, that's a good question. I just hope he's happy. Like, he's always getting in his own way. There's a lot of being happy with yourself. He's always looking for like external reassurance and stuff like that. Can I get into this club? Go this person invite me to their dinner party? Stuff like that. There's there's a lot to be said for being confident in yourself and okay with just you sometimes.
I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Well, that's kind of tough because I watch a lot. I guess I'll say I love the Back to the Future movies. Like, that's not really a guilty pleasure. I think everyone like universally thinks those are great movies. But maybe my guilty thing associated with that is I got a tattoo with the time that Marty McFly goes back to the future. So it's kind of a bizarre, hey, what's your tattoo? And I explained, well, but it's great because it's the movie that made me want to make movies, and it reminds me to like always be mindful of the future. What's the line at the end? Future is whatever you make of it, so make it a good one. So
would you buy a DeLorean if you could, if it's like available?
I've highly considered it. Have a 1-car garage right now, so a little tough. I need a daily driver, and then maybe one day I'll have that second parking space.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I was glad to be here.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, and of course on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.